Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started today. So welcome everyone to the September Family Day sponsor call on the CACAP new meal pattern. Before we get going, let's go ahead and take a quick roll call of everybody that's on the line. So first, who do we have on the line from CCDF? Okay, moving on, how about from Nutrition First?
Sue Maxwell and everyone else.
Good morning, Sue and everyone else.
Good morning.
How about Northwest Nutrition?
Linda and staff.
Good morning, Linda and staff. And then lastly, OCDC.
Cindy Andrews, Tammy Brown, Debbie Cosper. Patsy White is here too.
All right, excellent. Thank you everybody for joining. So on your screen you should see the agenda for today's call. Today we're going to review any meal pattern memos that either USDA or ODE-CMP released on a new meal pattern since our last call of August 14th. We're going to discuss menu review during a monitoring visit. We'll review the meal pattern transition period, and then we're going to allow some time for any additional questions you may have. So first, let's start with a review of the memos that were issued since our last call. We did issue one memo, and it was an ODE-CMP memo. On September 1st, ODE-CMP issued the Meet Alternate Q&A memo. The memo addressed questions received from the in-person meal pattern trainings that ODE-CMP offered in April. And you'll notice the questions and answers are organized by topic. And you'll see there are a total of 31 questions that were included with the Q&A. Does anybody have any questions about the Meet and Alternate today? Okay, very good. So next we're going to go over menu review during a monitoring visit. So as you know, during our last call, we started a discussion around what menu documentation a monitor would review during a visit to evaluate menu compliance with a new meal pattern. And as you're aware, the provider must maintain menu documentation, which would include things like food labels for breakfast cereals, labels for yogurt items, whole grain rich item, nutrition facts for whole grain rich items, CN labels, etc. And as you know, the documentation is not required to be submitted to you, to the sponsor, with the monthly menus. So during our August call, the question was asked, how many days of menu documentation must be reviewed during a monitoring visit? And what we said on that call is we would follow up with USDA for guidance. And we did follow up with USDA, and USDA stated that the state agency has the discretion as to what records are required to document compliance with the meal patterns. And USDA cited the August 11th memo titled Documenting Meals in the CACFP, stating that providers are required to demonstrate that they are serving meals that meet the meal pattern requirements, but that the states have the authority to determine the types of acceptable record-keeping documents required to demonstrate compliance with the meal patterns. And so what we proposed to USDA, we would propose an option that a monitor verifies meal compliance and menu documentation compliance by reviewing the menu documentation for the 5-day reconciliation. And USDA supported this option as it would provide a thorough review while at the same time balancing what's manageable for monitors. So long story short, what that means is that the policy for menu documentation, the menu documentation review, during monitoring reviews is as follows. The monitors will need to review the menu documentation, and that would include nutrition facts labels, CN labels, etc., for all meals and snacks served as part of the 5-day reconciliation, and this would include infant menus as well. Right now, ODE-CMP is finalizing this policy, and we will send this out to sponsors soon. We should have this to you very soon. So again, in order to verify menu compliance, what's required is that the menu documentation is reviewed as part of the 5-day reconciliation. So it would not need to go beyond that. So if there was a month worth of menus, if you're reviewing a month, you'd only have to do the menu documentation for those 5 days. So I'm going to just stop for a second and attempt to answer questions that you may have.
So Dustin, then what I'm assuming is if during those 5 days a provider did not serve any yogurt at all, there would not need to be a label that she has, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Justin, this is Tammy. I'm also assuming that if we are reviewing a meal service at our visit, that we would have to see the labels for that apply to that meal, correct?
That would be correct. So during the meal observation as well as the 5-day reconciliation. Any other questions?
Dustin, this is Sue again. I just want to verify. Currently, providers turn CN labels into us and we keep them on file. However, other than the CN labels, all of the other nutrition labels for cereals, yogurt, and whole grain items can be kept at the provider's home.
That's right. So the provider, that's right. The provider keeps all that documentation. Even CN labels. So you don't have to collect those. The CN labels can stay with the provider.
Awesome. Okay.
And if you recall, they can take pictures too. So there's electronic copies are allowable, but it has to be, you have to be able to read it, and you have to be able to tell what it is, and the product label, all that. So.
Okay, awesome. And we continue to have them send the CN labels just so we can check the dates on them and let them know when they're about to expire. That's all.
That's fine. Yeah, you can do that if you like.
Okay, thank you.
Sue, just real quickly, I was reminded that it is required that the provider keeps the documentation. So if they're sending in a copy of the CN label to you, it should be a copy and not just a copy of it, not the whole thing. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, it does. We generally just have pictures of it.
I assumed. I just want to clarify.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? It's normally not a quiet group, so I'm kind of surprised with no questions, but I'll take it. Okay, well, if there's no other questions on that, we can move forward. Before we do, though, we wanted to clarify, and this will be as part of in the menu documentation policy that we send out, but we wanted to clarify what needs to be included on the written menu with regards to cereals and yogurts. And we mentioned this briefly during the August call, but I just want to make sure it was clear. The provider must include on the menu what the brand name and flavor of the cereal and yogurt offered. And this is important to ensure that the cereal and yogurt meet the sugar limits. So for example, a provider cannot simply put cereal on the menu. They will need to include the name of the cereal. So for example, General Mills Cheerios or shredded wheat, or the brand name needs to be on there. And then also with the yogurt, it needs to include the flavor and the brand. So for example, it can't just say yogurt. It would need to say something like Dannon Light and Fit Greek yogurt, and then the flavor like strawberry.
And with the cereal, I'm sorry, with the cereal, they have to have the brand name, like General Mills, Cheerios, or I don't know who makes what, but like that, but they can't just write Cheerios or Kix. We have to know that it's the right brand. What brand?
That's correct. That's correct, because it is different.
Okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's correct, because they are different. Just because it's Cheerios doesn't necessarily mean that the brand of Cheerios meets the sugar limit.
Yes, it does.
Otherwise, it would say.
Can they, as a general note, all I serve are General Mills Cheerios and Post Raisin Bran, and can they do as a one note?
This is Vicki, and the reason why we were suggesting that we are requiring the brand name, because a lot of people will just refer to any O's cereal as Cheerios, or any corn little round balls as Kix. And so it's just to make sure that what they have on, what they're actually serving their participants is what they say they are on the menu. That if it's Cheerios, then it is General Mills, and it's not the Winco brand of O's.
And could they just make one general note, like on the front page or the last page of the menus? Because we have room for notes on ours. Could they say all cereals served are, and then list it just there instead of doing it each time it's served?
That would be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So I have a question. So this transition period, when they send in something that just says Kix, would we pay for that, or would we and remind them that they have to name the brand, or would we not pay them?
Remember, the transition period doesn't have any disallows
Right.
for new meal patterns. So this is a requirement for a new meal pattern that they have to document the name of the cereal and the brand name and whole grain. So you would not disallow any meals at this point in time, but you would give technical assistance.
Okay, Vicki, but it did say that if it doesn't meet the requirement, then you must disallow it. So I don't know what that means.
It means meet the meal pattern. So what it means is that if they're not serving milk, milk is a required component of the lunch. And if they don't have any milk served or documented, then that would be a disallow.
Okay,
but if they have milk on the menu and they served milk, but they didn't say that it was non-fat milk, that would not be a disallow.
Okay.
So if they serve like cereal that's chocolate frosted sugar bombs, we pay for it?
Yes.
Then we do.
Correct? If it's...
Hey, Linda, I couldn't hear that one. Can you ask that one more time?
Let's say that they serve a cereal that's like chocolate frosted sugar bombs. Are we paying for that at this time? Something overly sweet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we tell them to list the name and the item. Okay. So anything that meets the meat, the fruit or vegetable, the current requirement.
Let me go back to, I want to make sure we're clear. So I want to go back to the chocolate bombs cereal. So here's the thing, and with the transition period, USDA is trying to allow as much flexibility as possible. So if let's say that cereal, the chocolate bomb cereal, would be a creditable cereal, right? It's an enriched cereal, would have been a credible one. However, it might be over the sugar requirements. What you're required to do for the first year is provide technical assistance and not do any disallows. So in that situation, you would inform them that this is above the sugar requirement. You're going to have to you cannot offer that meal, but you would not disallow.
Okay.
Would that be the same for like serving cookies?
That would still be the same for the cookies, all that stuff too. Granola bars, correct?
That won't qualify anymore.
That won't qualify anymore. So,
Not sure what that means.
okay, so it's only what qualifies. Anything that doesn't qualify, like cookies, granola bars, will not be paid for.
What about like?
Because it
So
doesn't.
I want to, Linda, I want to
Yeah.
make sure that we need to answer the questions.
Is that correct?
So ask that question one more time, because I don't believe I heard the question.
So what about grain-based desserts? In the first year, if a provider still serves cookies, do we disallow that meal, or do we pay for it and just tell them they can't serve that?
That's exactly right. So what the USDA says, if they're making a good faith effort to try to meet meal pattern requirements, you are not to disallow. It's only technical assistance. So if they're making an effort, they're trying to do it, even if they offer a grain-based dessert that would not meet meal pattern, they would still claim the meal, you would still pay them for the meal, but you're going to give them technical assistance to let them know, okay, you cannot offer this anymore as part of the new meal pattern.
Okay, whoever that was that spoke a minute ago said something different, correct?
That's what it sounded like. Maybe
Okay.
they misunderstood.
Okay.
What you're asking.
That's not, I'm not sure who that is, but it's not ODE.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. They're trying to meet the
So
requirement.
since we're on this topic, with the transition period. Linda, I know that you had submitted some questions around it, and you just wanted to kind of speak to it in general terms. Do you have any other specific questions about the transition period, or did we address that?
Eggs more than 3 times a week. Is that the same thing? Where they're trying to meet it, so we're going to pay for it, and then we offer technical assistance.
Linda, I'm sorry, can you ask that one more? Did you say they're offering eggs 3 times a week?
No, more than what's
for the new breakfast pattern.
So again, it would be the same approach. So if it's not meeting meal pattern, and they're offering a meat alternate to replace the half of the grain, right? Mm-hmm. So if they're doing it, if it's not meeting meal pattern, then you would not disallow. However, you would provide technical assistance to give them the opportunity to fix that.
Okay, so the eggs meet half of the grain. Are you saying it meets half or the entire?
It meets the entire grain component.
Okay. I thought I heard you say half.
Yeah.
You got me.
I apologize. It's the entire grain component.
Okay.
This is Sue Maxwell. If I could tell Linda something that might make it easier, is the way it was explained to me, and it makes sense, is that any rule that we have right now, we would have to disallow if they weren't following rules right now. But any of the new regulations that take effect October 1st, those are the ones that get the transition.
Okay. Thank you, Sue.
That's correct. So.
Correct. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just made it easier.
May I ask a question, Dustin? This is Tammy.
Please.
Do you suggest that we inform the providers of the transition period?
I wouldn't suggest that, Tammy, because I think you want them to be, they have to be in compliance. So this is their chance. This year is their opportunity to come into compliance without having any disallows. So the idea is you're going in there and you're going to make it a finding if they're not meeting meal pattern. You're just not going to disallow, but it gives them the opportunity to correct. I wouldn't let them know about the transition period because what the memo says is they have to make a good faith effort. So you don't want them delaying on this. They have to be meeting meal pattern by October 1st. You're just not going to disallow for it.
Okay.
Good question. Any other questions on the transition period? Okay, if there's not any other questions on the transition period, I'm just going to go ahead and open up to general Q&A. Is there any, and we didn't receive any questions into the community nutrition inbox except for on the transition period. So is there any questions that have come up recently on the meal pattern that we can answer for you?
Justin, this is Sue again. I do have a question. You know, we're almost into October, and I wondered when we were going to be receiving our new home visit report that we fill out at the visit.
Hi, Sue. This is Vicki again. We had hoped to have it out earlier, but we wanted to just verify some regulatory requirements regarding the 5-day reconciliation to make sure our form was in compliance. And it appears that, yes, our form is in compliance without that table in there. So it has just gone to be from my draft to a person who knows how to really make them into forms. And so it should be coming out week. So thanks for bearing. Thanks for bearing with us on the delay. We really just wanted to verify that we were in compliance regulatory with the 5-day reconciliation.
Exactly. Thank you.
And this is Darcy, and you should use your old forms until you receive our new form. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy.
Are they going to give us a period to get them printed, or?
Yes, you have that time to get them printed and get started.
Okay, thank you.
Justin, this is Cindy at OCDC. I do have one other question about the transition period.
Yes, go ahead.
If a provider is like 3 months in a row after we had like wanted to say in October she continues to serve cookies or sweet items, and then we call her and write her a note on her summary, and then again in November and December she continues to do that. Do we still just give them the point, or at no point do we start deducting anything?
So that's a really good question, and my suggestion is that at that point, I think you could define that as not making a good faith effort. And so if they're not making, it doesn't say, you do have that option to disallow if they're not making good faith effort. So if you determine you've gone out there 3 times, you've given them technical assistance 3 times, and they're still not making an effort to meet the new meal pattern, then you do have the ability at that point to disallow.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question regarding breakfast cereal. We have a cook who always wants the raisin brand and she's not able to find a raisin brand will qualify. Cereal.
I'm sorry, you're really cutting out. I couldn't capture that question. Can you try one more time?
I'll try. Can a provider add raisins to a brand cereal?
I think the question, and this is Shirley, so I think the question was, can a provider add raisins to cereals? And so I believe we have that in our Q&As, and yes, you could add additional items to cereals.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
And just as a caveat that as long as the cereal that's being served does meet the sugar limit, adding additional toppings is okay.
Any other questions? Answer? Well, these are great questions. We really appreciate you asking. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, we're going to go ahead and end the call. As a reminder, if you do have any questions that pop up between now and our next call, please go ahead and send those to the communication inbox. We are tracking those, and we are collecting and saving them. So if you have any questions, send them that way. If not, please have a wonderful day, and we'll talk next month.
Thank you.